and welcome back to the Detours in Music podcast. My name is Laura Rupel. We are in Season 2, Episode 20, an interview with Frank Rosenwein, Principal Oboist of the Cleveland Orchestra and head of the oboe department at the Cleveland Institute of Music. I hope you enjoy.
Hi, I am Frank Rosenwein, Principal Oboe of the Cleveland Orchestra and head of the oboe department at the Cleveland Institute of Music.
And how long have you held those positions?
I joined the orchestra in 2005 and I joined CIM in 2006 just after the untimely death of John Mack.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk about your start in music, whether or not that started with the oboe or something else?
Yeah. I started on piano. My mom played piano, not professionally, but she was a diligent practicer. So I was really taken with the piano. So I started on piano and I begged my mom for lessons. I was about 5. So I started on piano and that went along for a little while. I think I was happy. I practiced with like a little ramekin of Cheerios and chocolate chips. That was helpful motivation. And then in about 4th grade, I picked up the clarinet and quickly dropped it a year later. Picked up the oboe, never looked back.
When did you realize that you wanted to go into music?
Yeah, there was sort of a particular moment. It was sort of my sophomore year of high school. I had established that this was something that I really liked to do. I was pretty good at it. I had friends, I had certain school friends, but everybody played sports and hung out after school and stuff. And I was always going off to rehearsal or practicing by myself or whatever. So my real friends were youth orchestra people and chamber music people and that kind of thing. And I just realized, yeah, this is the world I want to inhabit.
Mm-hmm. When you were looking at attending school, what drew you to where you ended up going?
Well, I went to CIM for my undergrad, and I originally started studying with Bob Morgan, who's an oboist in Chicago, and he was really instrumental in propelling me forward. He was a Ray Still student, but he had also studied with Mac. So at the time, that was like a thing. You're a Ray Still person or you're a Mac person. I feel like it's much more globalized these days, or at least within America, there's a little bit more fluidity. But in those days, there was very much the schools of playing. But he was one who had experienced both and found value in both. So I was lucky enough to have been able to study with Mac starting in my sophomore year. So every, I don't know, it wasn't that often, but few months I would come up to Cleveland. I grew up in Chicago, so took a plane to Cleveland, went up to the Institute or sometimes his house and had some lessons. So that was definitely a relationship that was really important to me, the Mac Cleveland relationship. And so when it came down to choosing a couple other options, but it was clear that this was going to be the best spot.
Yeah. And you did your master's at Juilliard, right?
That's right. Yeah. Studied with Delaney DeVos at Juilliard. Mm-hmm.
Was the draw there kind of the obvious, or was there anything more specific why you chose to go there?
Yeah, that was one of the places that I was thinking of going for undergrad.
Mm-hmm.
And of course the path from Mac to DeVos is a well-trod one, but for good reason. That is to say, he provided such a great base grounding for musical ideas and concepts of tone and even play it this way. But then DeVos has her own, as we all do, right? We study with with a person, and we don't become clones of them. We absorb all of their greatness, and in furtherance of our own journey. And so she really provided me with so much detail and finesse, and her particular specialty or particular focus on the vocality of oboe playing from all the years in the Met. That was, as influential, I would say, as Mac.
Hmm. Was there something in your undergrad that you found more difficult? The thing that you really had to focus on?
Yeah. So I was pretty good with my technique was pretty good. I get around the oboe. I had a certain amount of like fluency and fluidity on the oboe tone wise. Mac was always telling me, when are you gonna beef it up? When's it gonna start to bulk up? I don't think that really happened until I started playing in orchestras, really professional orchestras. Um, but but one thing that I do remember really working hard on was vibrato. For some reason, I never felt comfortable with vibrato. I started out life as a diaphragm person, and then I really wanted to switch to throat, and so I was sort of contorting myself to figure that out. For some people, it's really natural.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for me, it was a painful process. I don't feel like I really got too far with it. I just sort of accepted that this was what it was going to be until, I want to say, maybe 8 years ago. I mean, so it's like been a lifetime of searching for vibrato, and I finally feel like, okay, yeah, now I got something that I'm happy with.
I was going to say yesterday, hearing your Beethoven 3 with Cleveland Orchestra, your command of vibrato and the variety of vibrato was definitely a striking thing for me. So I would say you've definitely got it now.
That's so great, sometimes the thing that's the most difficult for you becomes the thing that, because you're working on it so assiduously, you sort of almost specialize in it, right? You start to kind of figure out things, and as you say, variety, that someone who maybe it comes more natural to just doesn't even
Mhm.
need to think about.
Yeah, exactly. Throughout your schooling, was there ever a point where you were thinking of an alternate career outside of music?
Um, I would say that I was interested in academics as a high schooler. I took some AP classes, way more on the humanities side than the science or math.
Mhm.
Um, and my mom is a historian, so I had some leanings in that direction. I think maybe that could have been like a path in academia. May have been a something that I would have pursued. I'm so glad I didn't. I mean, we think our jobs, our lives are so difficult, and there's so few positions for us. But academia, oh my gosh! I mean, at least we can sort of cobble together this and that, and you play a little bit in this orchestra, and then you teach and you do chamber music, and you form your own groups, and there's a certain entrepreneurial thing that I think we can tap into. But academia, wow, that's tough.
Has your career focus changed? For example, like really focusing all of your efforts into teaching or all of them into chamber music or things like that?
Yeah, what's interesting about me is that the career was pretty much cast pretty early. So yeah, it's been relatively constant, the search for greater truths in orchestra and greater insights into ensemble playing within that genre,
Mhm.
and then what can I bring to students
Mhm.
to further them with from my experience. But that's always been buttressed by solo stuff. I enjoy playing recitals and an occasional concerto here and there, and lots of chamber music. I go to Marlborough every other year, and yeah, I mean, I do find that one of the keys to playing an orchestra is a real focus on chamber music. I think it's one thing to, really know those solos and have everything sound great when it's your turn to shine, but 90% of the gig is support, finding are you what who are you who are you playing with, what's important here, and blending with your colleagues and helping them, all that.
Yeah. What was it like? I'm sure you've been asked this a lot, but kind of stepping into the shoes that your former teacher, John Mack, had both at the Cleveland Orchestra and CIM.
Yeah, it's such an interesting situation, and but I think there were a couple things that eased my path.
Hmm.
One of which was that I had studied with him, and had also studied with many of the members of the orchestra.
Hmm.
So, in a way, I was already sort of part of the spirit of it. I already, like, knew what people were about. I felt
Hmm.
comfortable with the style. I felt comfortable with, um, yeah, with sort of knowing my place. And the thing about the legend stuff is that legends really are made,
Hmm.
and not born. And funny story about Mac, actually. This was a few years ago, at Marlborough, actually. Myron Bloom, the famous principal horn of the Cleveland Orchestra during the Zell years, he was great friends with Mark Lifshie, and they, like, got in trouble together, and they were, like, giggling all the time together. And he was telling me these stories about the two of them. When Lifshie left the orchestra, and it was announced that John Mack was going to be the next principal oboe,
Hmm.
Mike Bloom said, "Over my dead body." Not that guy. That you can't follow Mark Lifshie up with him. You know, and then he admitted that yeah, he sort of he ate those words later.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show you that that really it's, the idea of, I think, of this kind of, fully formed human, or fully formed entity, which is maybe not so human.
Hmm.
It's really such a fallacy, and so the best thing we can do is to recognize and honor the the path that they had, and what they brought, and try to further that, and as with all traditions, if you're not going off in your own path, then that tradition gets stale.
Hmm. Hmm. What was the process for you like between your schooling and getting that job with Cleveland?
Yeah, well, it's so funny because, I suppose in hindsight, or to somebody looking from the outside, it sort of feels neat, kind of feels pat. It's like I
Hmm.
graduated, and then I went to this course, and then Cleveland, and then that's it. But when you graduate from grad school, there is no inevitability about
Hmm.
what's going to happen. I was um I graduated Juilliard. I was at Tanglewood that summer. I was auditioning, I was, preparing for San Diego audition, which was going to happen in September, and I ended up winning the San Diego, principal of San Diego, job. But that was completely,
Hmm.
um, unexpected, and I had been planning on sort of living in New York and figuring things out.
Mhm.
And so, but I was lucky enough that worked out. And then from there, it was really, that was like starting to just figure things out. The other thing is that people think when you get a job, you have to have it, you are fully formed, you get this job, but it's really so much not part of that. I mean, San Diego was so nice because they sort of took a chance on
Mhm.
somebody pretty young and inexperienced and all that. So I was very, very grateful to that orchestra. But the but the idea is really that, you're at a certain, everyone's sort of at a certain level,
Mhm.
and then from there you gain an experience and gain depth, and if you keep working really, really hard and keep, like, envisioning what could I do to get better,
Mhm.
um, then, over time that you'll you know you might just make it pretty far.
Yeah.
For the Cleveland thing, it was, yeah, it was 3 years after that. I spent 3 years in San Diego, um, and then came to Cleveland. So, um, yeah, I mean, that was right place, right time too. It's
Mhm.
like, um, 2005 was a time where so many American Orchestra principal oboe openings, were principal jobs were open. It was
Mhm.
like New York, the Met, LA. It was like all these things at once. I remember, winning the Cleveland job, and then, I think it was like on the cab ride to the airport or something, calling up the New York Phil and being like, "Nah, I'm not coming to that
Yeah.
audition.
You're like, I think my luck is I'll take
I'm
it.
good. I'm good. I'm good."
Yeah. Looking back at your career, are there moments that you would define as kind of being like a detour?
Well, I suppose the death of John Mack was
Mm-hmm.
was unexpected. I mean, I was there for a year,
Mm-hmm.
and he was around, like, he was very active, as people who knew him. It was like he was very involved, especially with the orchestra, and then at CIM. So he wasn't that old, right? And he had retired from the orchestra, but he was, so vital, in his teaching at Juilliard and teaching at CIM. So, he that his and I was a little bit distant, I would say, when I first got to Cleveland, because, trying to sort of be my own person and stand on my
Mm-hmm.
own 2 feet or whatever. And he could be, somewhat, opinionated and so forth and so on. So, wanted to be my own man or whatever. But then having him die so soon after I'd started, um, I was really regretful that I hadn't, done enough to sort of, yeah, to gain his counsel.
Mm-hmm.
And 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 then and then with with his passing, CIM coming open was also really a, a monkey wrench, because I didn't have tenure. I was, still just trying to figure out, like, how do you go from week to week playing 3 4 concerts a week, at the highest level, and,
Mm-hmm.
just yeah, that whole thing. I mean, that sort of felt overwhelming. So now all of a sudden, here's CIM. Oh my
Mm-hmm.
God, what am I gonna do? That was maybe the moment. Um,
Yeah. I feel like it would
yeah.
take years, yeah, to kind of get all that manageable.
I mean, some people really just, yeah, take to it like a fish to water. It's just, yeah, that's what they do. But yeah,
Mhm.
it was difficult for me. Consistency. I mean, especially with oboe, right? Like the
Yeah.
consistency thing. It's just, and you want to treat every rehearsal like it's a real performance.
Hmm.
You want to be able to be musically interesting and supportive of your colleagues, and you want to be able to experiment, do this and that. So you really have to have something that, like, I don't show up to rehearsal with something that I wouldn't play in a concert, really, really. So all that, it's like, you know, the pressure you put on yourself to constantly achieve. I think that's it's important, but it's also it's difficult.
Yeah, that's a lot of reads.
Yeah, yeah, right.
That's a lot. What are some of your goals right now for either your studio at CIM, the Cleveland Orchestra, or just you specifically?
Yeah. Well, CIM, I really am um I'm really happy with how things are going. I feel like we got a good thing happening. Um my only sort of regret right now, for this particular moment in my life, is that I got all these kids, um, these three kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I have 6-year-old twins and a year and a half year old. So it's just like it's just so crazy around here all the time,
Yeah.
that it's hard. You know, it's hard for me to get away at night. So it's hard for me to, you know, unless it's concert night.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard for me to, like, you know, go to a lot of their concerts
Mm-hmm.
right now. But luckily a lot of stuff is live streamed, so I can sort of do bedtime and then catch most of the live stream. Um, so but I do feel like that's going really well, and we got a good thing going. Me and my colleague Jeff Rep and over there at CIM. Um, and as for the orchestra, boy, it's I mean, it's just still just always a pleasure to be able to make music with those guys. It's
Mm-hmm.
really it's special. I feel really blessed. And personally, yeah, I would like to I like to do some recording. I haven't done quite enough, really any sort of like commercial, you know, put out a CD
Yeah.
kind of stuff. So I'd really like to do that. And I think, you know, once these kids get less crazy, then things I think we'll go there.
You got to show off that vibrato you've got now.
That's right. I would just add, that I think the most important thing as a student is to start finding the vision for your own playing, to absorb all that you can from everyone, but not to be swayed in a real fundamental way from certain truths that you're trying to expose in your playing, whether that's a certain tone that you think is ideal, um, a certain mode of expression, um, I think, or even changing your embouchure or this kind of thing. Like those are things that you should really obviously have as much influence as you can from outsiders and from experts, but to really be developing this sense of individuality, I think is um and individuality and individual goals, like really finding like what am I actually doing. If you do that in what am I going for ultimately, if you do that in from every practice session
Hmm.
to every 2D section in the orchestra,
Hmm.
you'll you'll get there. What
Yeah.
happened?
I think that's very important to remind students, especially that, you're not sitting down to practice mindlessly. It's all thought out, and there's no just like, oh, it'll work out or it'll happen. You got to be conscious and aware for that to work.
Right. Or that somebody told me that I needed diminuendo here, so I'm gonna do a diminuendo. You know,
Mhm.
it's like, okay, well, yeah. I mean, somebody told me to do a diminuendo. What is the context in which I'm
Mhm.
doing this diminuendo?
Yeah.
If I'm doing this diminuendo and I'm leeching all the tone and interest from my playing,
Mhm.
am I doing the right thing? Yeah, you're getting softer, but are you
Mhm.
has the music been enhanced by that, you know, that
Mhm.
kind of thing.
Yeah. Ask questions of ourselves.
Mm,
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah.
I really enjoyed my conversation with Frank Rosenwein, and I think something that was really beautiful to take away from that was his comment about John Mack when he started at the Cleveland Orchestra, and people maybe weren't as impressed upon hearing that he would be their new oboist, and to the point that legends aren't born, they are made. And I would say by now, of course, we know Frank Rosenwein is also a legend of oboe playing, and I was just really inspired to get to sit down and talk to him. And it's also inspiring to all of us that no, people might not know your name yet, but that doesn't mean that they won't in the future. As always, thank you for listening, and keep up with the podcast on social media, and don't miss our next episode. Thanks.